Biggest day yet in the planer rebuild. Today, I'm going to install the Shelix Cutterhead. First thing we got to do is get this cutter head wrapped up. Don't want to damage me or the carbide teeth. Yeah, that's a bit sharp. Okay, now first I need to reinstall this oil seal, and I'll lube it back up with a little bit of oil, and then we're going to turn this over and put the new bearing in. Okay, brand new bearing. Hopefully this goes in there without a problem. Yeah, it looks like it's well seated. This table's kind of unsteady. Hopefully that won't be too distracting. Now we have a little retainer screw that goes right here, which is this, and it has a little washer as well. And now we have this bearing right here that covers the other side of it. Beautiful. Okay, now I just have a little bit of cleaning to do on this, not much. And then I need to clean up the gasket, and we'll put some Permatex on the gasket just to hold it in place, and we'll get this thing assembled. Just getting a little bit of this old grease off of the gears. We're putting all new grease in here, or gear lube, not quite grease. And getting any little chunks of stuff that I can get. Actually, I'm jumping the gun a little bit. This gear right here goes on the end of the cutter head, and it has this retaining screw, and that keeps it locked on to the bearing there. So this has to come through here, and then this gets put on it, before I can close this up, and this gear has to go in. So I think we're gonna pull up the stool and something to put the end of the cutter head on, and I will put this between my legs and tap this down onto it. A little bit of oil first, and a little bit of oil on here. Hopefully this goes smoothly. I had to press it off with a gear puller, but I believe it'll go on much easier than it came off. Beautiful. That might be on. Let's check it. I think it's on. Yeah, that's fitting on just fine. There it goes. All right, let's get this on the bench and try spinning this gear. This is going to be kind of hard, but this is what turns the cutter head. It appears to be nice and smooth, but it's kind of hard to tell like this. That's gonna work just fine. Okay, now let's get this cover on here. Gonna clean this neoprene gasket with alcohol. Hopefully that won't attack it. All right, now we have some Permatex high-tech gasket sealer. Let me get a wrench for this. And what we're going to do is paint a little bit of this on this edge here, get the gasket stuck onto it, and then we'll put another layer on top of it. and hopefully get this together without it all smearing all over the place. Okay, got the gasket stuck in place, and put a little bit of this on the other side. I don't think it needs it really. The neoprene itself should do the job. I have oil down into these castings down here where the bearings go, and I also have oil on here, and try to get this thing on here straight. Okay, we got a problem, and I wasn't expecting a problem at this stage, but the cutter head turns fairly stiffly, and this is not turning when I turn the cutter head. You're not supposed to shift this when it's not moving, but I have really no choice. The middle is neutral, and out is where I want it at 16 feet per minute. But no matter what I do, I'm not getting this shaft to turn. And this is what gives power to this. So I'm going to have to pull this apart again and see what the heck is going on. I mean, there's not a lot to it. It only goes together one way. But maybe one of the gears is missing. I don't know. We'll have to pull this apart and see. Which means I'm going to have to clean that gasket, and hopefully I don't damage the gasket because it's the only one I got, and I don't have any gasket material on hand. I actually do have some neoprene that's about the right size that I could probably use. That's all that is. Okay, let's get this apart and we'll take a look, see what's going on. It moves a lot better now. So it could be yeah, let's get this apart. Okay, I got this apart. And it appears as though this gear right here was in the neutral position, and for some reason, well, you're supposed to have it running when you shift gears, so I'm sure that was it. So now I just have to put this back together again. Let me show you how it's running. Runs nice and smooth, and this turns. Now I have to get this gear right here meshed up with this gear and get that shaft back into this bearing here and get the whole thing tapped down again, which means tapping these down into these here. But that's what I did before. It's just that it was in the wrong position. I think everything's running smooth now, and it wasn't that easy to get this apart. So let's clean up some of this gasket sealer, put new gasket sealer on, and start over. This actually does not need gasket sealer. I was just using that to hold it in place. So I think I goobered that on a little bit too heavy. We'll put a little bit less on this time. I see what happened. The shift lever wants to drop down. Let's double check this and make sure that that's turning before we put the bolts in. I played around with this, and I had to move the shifter and jiggle this around until I got it so that the cutter head is spinning and the drive is spinning. Now we'll get this thing put together or bolted together, and that should be it. It's spinning real nice and smooth now. Okay, we got it back together again, and it's turning just fine. I don't know though, if I tighten down these nuts as tight as they go, it stiffens up like that again and it doesn't want to turn. Maybe that's why they give you a neoprene gasket like that. I don't know. I'm going to put it together, and I'm not going to put the cover on this part. And after I run it for a little bit, I'll try tightening these up again and see if it still locks like that. It might be that the teeth need to mesh a little bit better. I don't know. But we'll fill this with oil and see if it leaks, because I had to back off these screws about a quarter of a turn to get it so that it moved like this. So let's get that plug in there and put some oil in it, and if it leaks, we're going to have to do something else. Take it apart again and see what's going on. I don't have to put all this oil in there. I have to go down to this line right here, but I should be able to just put a little in here. And turn it the way it goes and see if it leaks. Okay, I've been playing around with this, and you can see like oil kind of moving around right here. The oil should be sitting down, way down here. There's 20 ounces of oil in here. But for some reason, well, I don't know if the gears are bringing it up to the top, but it certainly shouldn't be coming out the gap right there. And we got oil right there too. Unbelievable. I'm going to have to take this apart again. I might make new gasket. Oh, does that suck? But I can't leave it like this. And like I said before, I believe I said it, when I crank these down to try to seal it, the cutter head does not turn as well. So if I loosen these up just a smidge, this runs smooth as silk. And when I tighten them all the way up, maybe if I were to just put a thicker gasket in there, I don't want to keep taking this apart, but I don't want to put it in the machine the way it is. Okay. Well, I got to take it apart, pull that gasket out, and get another gasket made, something that's thicker. This just crushes up. It's neoprene, and you could see it's squeezing out. So that's probably why this is too tight, because it's squeezing out like that. Maybe if I put a cork gasket in here, or even a paper gasket, a thick paper gasket. I'm going to go look into gaskets, take this apart, and it's got oil in it now. Drain the oil. Okay, we'll get that done. Okay, I think I know what, well, there's two problems. One problem is that when I'm putting this together, these bearings are not seating all the way. So I believe I'm going to pull the bearings off. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this or not, but that bearing back there, that's not seated at all. I played around with it a little bit when I was taking this apart, so I don't know if it was fully seated when it was assembled before, but it's sure not now. What I'd like to do is pull the bearing off of this as well and get those bearings fully seated, and then tap these gears back onto it and get these bearings seated into there, and just have the ends of the shafts and then put it together from there. That's my plan for smooth running. Look at how smooth that runs. Well, that bearing's not seated, but it doesn't have this pushing up against it. But that's how smooth I believe it should be. So between that and putting on, I don't know, a 16th inch gasket, maybe 3/32, nice heavy paper gasket, I think that's going to solve the problems. Then I'll be able to tighten it up completely, and it's not going to pinch something in here and make it run real stiff like it was before. That's my plan. I have to go get bearing material, and with this completely disassembled, with that bearing out of there, I can get a real nice pattern for a bearing for this. So I'll take this in the house and continue to clean it up tonight, and then I'll order some gasket material. We'll get a gasket made and start again. Yeah, I'll put this all in the same video. Doesn't matter how long it is. It's a couple days later, and I have my gasket material ready to go, but I thought I'd catch you up on something. This idler goes through this side. It's got two, well, they're roughly 1/2 inch, they're metric, 2 screws that hold it on, and then this spring goes on that little hook right there. But these go through the casting, and at the factory they put on what looks like JB Weld. It's a really dark gray, and it was hard as all get out, but it went into the bearing. This bearing, you can see where that stuff is on there. This bearing was in there like that, and that stuff was all goobered inside of here. The bearing turned, but it turned really hard, and after I picked all that stuff out of there, it actually locked up for a while, and I got it moving again. It's moving fairly good, but I'm thinking I should probably replace this bearing. I can get one in town when I go to town, but that's going to take another whole day. So I scraped off all that stuff. What I'm going to do is just put this gasket sealant on the threads of these nuts when I put this back together. But for now, we'll make a gasket. Gonna do it with a ball peen hammer. You've probably seen that done before. This is a pretty thick gasket, so I'm not exactly sure how it's gonna work, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but I kind of have where the holes are located marked on here, because you really can't feel through this to feel where the holes are. We'll give it a try. If that doesn't work, I can kind of trace it. You know, just put it like that and then use a square and get a square corner and go that way. I probably could just trace it, but yeah, maybe I will. If I trace the outside, use this to trace the outside, I can just set this on the inside and trace that and just cut this thing out with a razor knife. How you do it with a ball peen hammer, you just place the paper over here and you tap at the edges and it breaks the paper. And you get a pretty good gasket that way, but I can get a perfect one this way. Okay, we got the gasket done, and I'm just going to start installing this. This bearing is just fine without that little chunk of stuff in there. I also lost the ball detent, and for those of you who do the same, it's a 5mm. I just bought a pack of 600 for, I think this was like $9. It was either that or buy 25 of a specific size for $5. So for $4 more, I got zillions of ball bearings that I'm never going to use. But it's kind of lucky I did buy this pack like this, because I thought this was a 2mm and it wound up being a 5mm. So I might have bought several different sizes before getting it correct. So to start the assembly, we're going to get a little bit of oil on these and insert the bearings, and then we'll go from there. Just want to get a little bit of light oil on here so it goes in there easy. This is 3-in-1 oil, which I believe is 20 weight. Wow. That's going in pretty hard. it was just going in a little bit crooked. Yeah, that's why I want the bearings in before I assemble this. The last time I did this, I assembled it with the bearings already on the shafts, and it assembled, but I don't think it went together all the way. I'll try to tap this in straight. There we go. And nice and smooth. There it goes. A little bit more. That's it. Bearing's in there, but it seems a bit stiff. Take this off there. Yeah, that bearing is kind of stiff to start with. All right, let's put this back together. There we go. Turning nice and smooth. I think I had the oil seal up against it too tight. Hopefully this oil seal does not leak. That's more like it. Beautiful. Now, got that little spring. And the ball detent. And this gear captures that ball. That was a little too stiff. Oh, I'm glad I bought these. Let's see if that was 4mm. I just dropped one on the floor. Four millimeter fits in there real nice. Yeah, I'm real glad I got this pack. I believe it is 4mm. Oh, actually, let's look at 3. It's so hard to move that you end up yanking it and losing the ball. All right. Quit messing with it. Now I got to turn this up so I can pound this into that bearing back there. And then this fork goes in there, and this fork might need to go in. Yeah, fork needs to go in at the same time as the bearing, or these gears. Okay, let's tip this up. It's hard to see if it's on the gear back there or not. Find out. I'm going to need a flashlight. Well, this just goes right back on here, no problem. I got this on and it's spinning really nice and smooth. Oh, I took this gear off just to see what was going on down in there. But unfortunately, this is now pounded in there tight, and this shift lever needs to be in this little opening here, and it won't go over there, so I have to pull the whole thing back out again and get the shift lever over here. And I gotta hope that everything lines up real nice like it does. Everything is spinning nice and perfect. And then it's just a matter of this gear matching up with that. When I go to put the cover on, this one will go right through the oil seal. These two will go into bearings on the other side, and this one will go right through and have the shifter knob on it. But unfortunately, I gotta get this gear out again. Got bearings up the wazoo. Just a huge amount of drama trying to get this together, but I'll go over it real quick. When I was getting this out, I broke the spring. I slid the gear past the spring and it cut it in half. I went to town, I believe this is one of them, and got some springs, and they were a little too big, and that's all they had in town. So I ordered a little box of springs on Amazon, and it has the correct one. But at some time during that, I believe it was the same day, I had a hospital appointment. I went to the appointment. They discovered that my hemoglobin was real low, and I was admitted to the hospital. I was there for 5 days, and then I had to go back for an appointment the day after for an infusion. And now it's like a week later, and I'm going to get this job finished up. So I'm going to put this ball bearing back on there, get that on there, and get that shift lever in the right position, which is down here, and get the rest of these gears in there. We'll tap that back in there. Okay, not sure if you'll be able to see this very well or not. I think you can. The only real difference between how it's assembled is that it came assembled, when I pulled it apart, everything was assembled to the cover, or almost everything. So I'm gonna try that. It has a couple seals and stuff on it, but the gears are in the same way, but that's how that shifter was trapped, because this would then be right up against this bearing here. So this shifter fork, and you can see it on the picture, this shifter fork goes in first, then this gear, which is under this one, then this gear here. And I believe, yeah, I don't know why this circlip is on there. I don't know, well, maybe that keeps the spacing from this bearing. Let's pull these out of here and assemble them into here and go from there. We'll just put the bearings on the other side and try to assemble it. We'll get it figured out, and then you won't have to. The thing that concerns me, though, is that that really doesn't solve the problem of that bearing flying out, and that can happen at any time, it seems like. Maybe not. Oh no, the fork will hold this gear from going too far, I believe. I think that's supposed to stop it right there, but I don't know if that's gonna work. Or no, that's just a seal. Let me get this reassembled on this side, and I'll get back with you then. Beautiful. I'm going to use a slightly more detailed brush on this because this stuff is pretty messy. It happened off camera, but I was going back and forth tightening these bolts, and I tightened this one and it went tink, like it went down a little further. So the last time when it was leaking, that bearing must not have been all the way in there. The cutter head spins freely as well. Let's get it up on the table and I'll show you that. Okay, the cutter head is spinning nice and freely, and it was not last time. The shaft out front is spinning as well, and that's actually where the power comes in, and then the shifter shifts it between high, neutral, and low. And you don't want to do that when it's not running. I could probably do it while I'm turning the cutter head, but I think I'll wait till I get it on the machine before I play around with that. Probably shouldn't be playing around with it to start with. It's going to be a little bit messy. Put the nuts in there first so that it's not pushing anything through, and then turn these in. This cleans up, I believe it's with lacquer thinner, but I have pretty much every solvent known to man here, so we'll get this cleaned up. There we go. I could put Teflon tape on there as well, but I was trying to do it the way that Delta did it, but maybe that's a mistake. I don't know. If I have any problems with it, I can take these out, put some Teflon tape in there, and just reassemble it. Let's get this mess off of there and be done with this. All right. Yeah. This was supposed to be pulled out. It's hard to tell if this is turning or not, but it is. Okay, that's where it's supposed to be. And we'll just leave it there. I generally don't shift the planer very much, or at all. The high speed, well, I might now that I have a spiral cutter head, but in previous versions of this machine, with a regular knife, if you cut at the 36 feet per minute, it would just clog up the dust port. So maybe I will be able to do some high-speed planing. It'd save some time. Okay, I do believe this is all ready to go. all I got to do is put the cutter head in, which is, or maybe easier said than done. It's going to come down to this bearing right here, how easy that bearing goes in, and it's all nice and clean. So I believe if I get everything real nice and straight in line, hopefully I'll just be able to tap that right in. Okay. Yeah, and I'm sorry about the length of this video, but I do believe other people, when they work on this, when they work on the transmission, I've seen some pretty shady stuff where they just show it back together again and put it on the machine. They don't show all of the stuff that you go through, and you may not need to show all the stuff, but I thought I would show it and let you know how hard it is. And I made it harder than it needed to be because I messed up so many times, messing up the springs, messing up the bearings, and then trying to put it back together the opposite of the way it came apart. I didn't think that everything had to be assembled to this cover, and it really did. So yeah, make sure you subscribe, and we'll get this thing put into the machine in the next video.